Late in the campaign, Nixon announced that he was coming to the district at the request of the Republican candidate. Now, at that point in time, you recall Watergate was a major, major issue for Republicans. And Nixon's popularity and approval ratings dropped dramatically. And we tied Jim to Nixon's coattails. And while he didn't say that he did not invite Nixon, he didn't want to precisely say that he had invited him. And we made much ado about Nixon history, and that Sparling was one of his hirelings and would do his will in the Congress.
You were basically turning this election into a referendum on Nixon.
Exactly.
And
so
Jim Sparling was just a surrogate for Nixon.
Precisely.
That's what you were saying.
Precisely. Just by way of history, my pollster was a man by the name of Peter Hart.
Sure.
Well-known pollster now.
Sure.
And the media consultant, the guru, was a fellow by the name of Squires.
Bob Squires.
Bob Squires, who's now deceased.
Right.
But
he was a very colorful guy. He was a real character.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he was, I would say, 5 out of 7 of his ideas were excellent. The other 2 you had to sort of draw a line through. and I insisted on vetting every one of his ideas. It was a fascinating experience. And we worked so hard. The only time I had off was Sunday mornings. And we would work 12 to 14 hours a day.
That was like a 6-month campaign almost from the time the announcement you made in the fall until the
I
election.
never understood why the process of his being confirmed by the Senate, or even his name being submitted, took so long.
Took so long.
Yeah, it was extremely
because
unusual.
It dragged everything out. Okay, so you won by about what? Was it like 53,
I think it was
47?
1.5%.
1.5%. Wow. So you get in, you're a congressman, you go to Washington. What did you find?
A different environment, a bigger ball game, more complex, perhaps more serious issues, a Congress that was preoccupied with the question of to impeach or not to impeach. Judiciary hearings were going forward. The then Speaker, Carl Albert, asked if I wanted to go on the Judiciary Committee. I said no, and thank you. I want a committee that's relevant to my district, but with not too much visibility or work at this point, because I have to go home and campaign.
Right.
And the election was, of course, following immediately in November.
Right.
So I had from mid-April until first Tuesday in November to firmly establish myself. And we took advantage of the frank, mailed out hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail, wherever 2 or 3 gathered together. In other words, the first campaign for the special election never ended, and it went right on through until Election Day in November.
Did Sparling run again?
He did run again and was severely defeated.
Right, because in November it was a huge Democratic sweep nationally, and so, you know, you won by a very substantial majority.
And I had firmly established myself in the district. My rural roots did not fail me, and I had a wonderful relationship with the farmers.
The days as Huck Finn paid off.
Absolutely.
There you go. Okay, so it's November 1974. You're elected to your first full term in the Congress. You go on to serve 2 years under Jerry Ford, 4 years under Jimmy Carter, 8 years under Ronald Reagan, 4 years under George H.W. Bush. That entire tenure, 18 years, what do you look back on as your signal accomplishments during that time?
Good question, Bill. I was not on a legislative committee, and by that I mean I was not on a committee that wrote bills and engaged in lots of debate, both within the committee and on the floor, relative to these very substantive issues confronting the nation over those years. I was on the appropriation committee.
You were a cardinal.
Eventually.
Isn't that what they tell people what a cardinal
well,
is?
Appropriation Committee had, in the House, had 13 subcommittees, and I served on 3 of those. And the cardinals were the chairman of the subcommittees. and we would meet. My last 4 years in the Congress, I was chairman of a subcommittee.
That was HUD, right?
Yes.
Housing and Urban Development?
Housing, urban development, veterans, I had 2 cabinet agencies, HUD and the Veterans Administration. The rest of the committees of our jurisdiction consisted of independent agencies like NASA, National Science Foundation, EPA. Very, very interesting, and then a bunch of smaller ones that we'd spend no more than 2 or 3 hours reviewing their budget.
Were you on Agriculture Subcommittee?
Yes, I was. That was my other. I had 2 major committees, HUD, VA, and Agriculture. And Agriculture fit in very well with my rural constituency. HUD, VA fit in very well with the urban areas, Saginaw Bay City, and as a cardinal, I had command of not just me, but working with my committee members and with my counterpart in the Senate. We had immense amounts of money that we were responsible for.
So what were you able to do for your congressional district by dint of being a cardinal?
Well, I took a leaf out of the Southerners' book. And the Southerners believed that their purpose in Washington was to fill their carpet bag with as much gold for their districts as they could possibly carry. And I felt that coming from a state that was always at a disadvantage in the apportionment of federal funds, that it was my responsibility as a Michigan member of the Appropriations Committee to do whatever I could to right what I perceived to be a great injustice. And the committees presented themselves, because I was on them, gave me an opportunity to direct monies back to the state of Michigan and my district. And there were some interesting projects, good things happened.
What specifically? Can you?
Well, the Food Toxicology Laboratory building at MSU, which incidentally was built in my term at MSU. So I had spent 10 years in the Congress working towards that appropriation, got it done, left the Congress, got elected to the MSU Board of Trustees, and watched the design and the construction of the building.
Wow. And
they wanted to name, the president and the provost wanted to name the building after me. When we went around on that point, and I told them, no, you don't, I didn't do this to have buildings named after me. I have no interest in that. And at the same time, they wanted to name a building after the governor, John Engler. And they said, you know, the governor has some reservations about this as well. This was, I think, the livestock exhibition building, very beautiful facility.
Right.
And they said, look, you're interested in history. What happened here is history. Can we put a plaque up inside the building? Mm-hmm. And we'd like to do the same thing for the governor then.
Sure.
And I said, well, I think it's appropriate. He's done a lot of things on behalf of the university, and he deserves recognition. And I think that's appropriate. Well, what about you? We can't do it for him unless we do it for you. I said, okay, you're going to do it. Don't make a big do about this, okay? And they did. And plaque is in the building, in the lobby. And
what about other accomplishments by you as an Appropriations Committee member for your district,
okay.
like up in Bay County?
One other project that wasn't in my district is the new VA hospital in the city of Detroit. And that was over $300 and some million at that time. It took me another 10 years to get that done. But, okay, coming back to the district.
So you were doing things not just for your district, but, you know, for the state of Michigan, wherever it was located.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Veterans Cemetery in Battle Creek that I told the then congressman, I said, this is you take the credit for that. The hospital in Detroit, the veterans organizations worked hard for that from this state. And incidentally, it got held up for a year by 2 good friends of mine, John Dingell, Bill Ford. They both complained to me that this new hospital was going to take some of their constituents, move them from Allen Park into the city of Detroit. Maybe even some of them would lose their jobs. And I told them, not so. Yes, they will have to commute, but they're not